Hey, Fanboy Nation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
We're watching Fanboy.
A fanboy, etc.
Fanboy Nation.
Dot, I assume Tom.
For some reason, after 5 years, this man still tolerates me and my lunacy in the questions that I've been asking him. But today, yet again, I get to talk to Brian Volk-Weiss. How are you today? Or Weiss, I'm sorry, Brian Volk-Weiss. See, he always gets me confused with certain things and
Weiss does mean white in German, so you're more right than you knew.
Okay.
I'm good, man. Good, and I love your questions, so we're all good.
Listen, we're talking about the new Star Wars anthology documentary series with the former Mrs. George Lucas and Vice TV. How did this all come about?
So, as you are aware, and have had a front row seat, my company and I tend to make documentaries. And I love Star Wars. So after covering Aliens, Star Trek, you name it, I finally felt, for a bunch of reasons, we were ready to tackle Star Wars. And luckily, some other companies agreed with me, and we did.
But you're only going episodes 1 through 6. You're not hitting, well, no, actually, it makes sense, the prequels, because George had already sold off by the time we got to episode 7.
Yeah, listen, I only like to do documentaries about things that I like and I'm excited about. There's a bunch of Star Wars after the prequels that I love. Don't get me wrong. Rogue One, I actually do love JJ's first film. I understand what's wrong with it, but I still love it. But there's also a lot of Star Wars after the prequels that I am not a fan of. So I just don't want to make a documentary crapping all over a movie that thousands of people spent trying to make work. So that's the answer.
I got you with that. And I like that I do the same thing. If it's a movie that I can't absolutely say anything nice about, I just won't review it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because it's not fair to all the people that broke their backs trying to make it. I get you. Yeah. And so Star Wars, because there hasn't been enough said about Star Wars, but now we got Marcia Lucas on board for this interview. Marcia, I'm sorry. Yeah, you spell it one way and then it's pronounced 9 different ways.
That's right.
Yeah. You have Marcia Lucas on board with this. What was it like getting Marcia in front of the camera to do an interview for the Star Wars doc?
First of all, it's her first filmed interview ever. She's never done it before, and it's only her second interview ever. The last one was for a small town in Northern California about 45 years ago. Getting her was pretty standard. We interviewed somebody else, and he knew Marcia's assistant. He gave us Marcia's assistant's email and phone number, and after about 2 weeks of going back and forth, she agreed to do it. And literally the next day, I was supposed to go to New York, but I flew to Hawaii, and I interviewed her the day after that. It was pretty straightforward, but I mean, it was a 6-hour interview. I mean, it was a doozy.
And if there were any problems, their daughter was an MMA fighter for a little while, so they just send her after you.
That's right. Luckily, it didn't come to that.
Yeah. Star Wars in itself has become greater than, most mythologies, at least in modern science fiction, and changed the entire landscape of science fiction. Like Logan's Run was kind of the last one of the old guard, and then Star Wars ushered in the new guard with everything. And I hear a lot of people will say, I love Star Wars, but I hate, what is it? 10 of the 13 films, or, whatever they say, things of that sort. What is it with the love of the original 3 that we've turned into such a great mythology to now turn around and not like the rest of the franchise, but still be loyal to it?
Well, you have to understand 2 things. First of all, I'm 46. I'm just going to talk for myself, no one else. People my age hate the prequels. And by the way, I do not hate the prequels at all. I like the prequels. I don't love them, but I like them. You ask anybody under 35 or maybe 32, What do you think of Star Wars? They love the prequels and they think the original are slow and boring. So it's all, and by the way, a lot of our editors are in their 40s, and I would get some cuts where I'm like, you're punching down. You're a 49-year-old man and you hate the prequels, but people are going to be watching this who are not 49-year-old men. Women like the prequels much more than they like the original. So, for example, my kids can't watch anything in the originals. Everything they like is from the prequels. Yeah. So that's exhibit A. Exhibit B, I mean, we really tried to weave an arc over the course of the 6 episodes. And we try to connect what's going on in Attack of the Clones to what was going on in A New Hope. And the idea was that, I kind of call it the pizza theory, because there's an argument that there's no such thing as bad pizza. I don't agree with that. I've had tons of bad pizza, but my point is, I don't stop eating pizza because I've had bad pizza. So a lot of people complain about Kathleen Kennedy and they always torture her because of Last Jedi or the Book of Boba Fett. But they conveniently forget that she's also responsible for Rogue One. She's also responsible for The Mandalorian. And like, sometimes there's bad pizza. So I'd rather live in a world where every 4 to 6 months, there's some new Star Wars movie or TV show coming out, even if 75% I don't like. I'd rather have stuff coming out, because when it comes out and it works, the way Mandalorian works, the way the Clone Wars worked after season 2, like, it's worth it because it's great.
I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah. I will tell you this as a man who's 44 years old, that I didn't like the prequels when they first came out. And then when 7, 8, and 9 came out, they gave me a brand new appreciation for the prequels.
I do love 7. I love it. I absolutely love 7, but I'll give you 8 and 9, especially 8. Oh my God. That holy moly. Anyway.
We'll play nice for now, because there's still so much more Star Wars stuff coming out that we don't want Disney to blacklist me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The fact that there's you got Marcia involved in all of this, and this is her second interview ever in 45 years, is a testament to what you've been able to pull off with all the other documentary series that you've done. What is it about her reflection now that's so what's the right word I'm looking for? Insightful in comparison, because she was there from the get-go.
Well, she was there from the get-go, and if you watch all 6 episodes, you'll see 10% of it is about her being his ex-wife. 90% of it is about her not just being the editor, but even on Empire, which she didn't edit, like, she still gave creative notes that, in my opinion, kind of, I wouldn't say saved the movie, but helped give it the resonance that it's had, 40 years later. So that's what we really tried to show about her. And again, she was there. Like, she was a witness. So like, there were certain things I knew about George, but I didn't understand how important they were. And then there were things we didn't know about George and nobody knew, but because she was married to him and dating him for 10 years before A New Hope came out, she was there. She was at Christmas dinners with the Lucas family. She knew George's dad. So like, I had always known that George Lucas had a complicated relationship with his dad. Anyone who's read any book would know that. But I didn't understand, and I didn't connect the dots about the nuance of their relationship and how that led to how George built Lucasfilm and how important that relationship was to why George will be somebody that our civilization talks about for 1,000 years. A lot of that was connected to what his dad taught him about owning your own business.
And does that come in, is there any resolve between him and his father before his passing, or none whatsoever?
There was, yes.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm sure she was privy to.
Yes, she was.
when it's something like this and realizing that the legacy's there, and hers was almost kind of erased as the ex-wife, and that's all, not realizing how much input she had in this series, almost to the extent of Jeff Bezos's ex-wife, when they're like, well, she's the second, she's the most richest woman in the world, but because she got that in the divorce, not because she helped build Amazon. The two aren't the same level. And I'm not saying that Bezos's ex-wife didn't have any involvement, because she was there from the get-go of Amazon, so we don't know what she did behind the scenes. But is that an unfair comparison between the two?
It's very unfair because, and again, I have to say for the record, I have no idea what Bezos's ex contributed or didn't contribute to Amazon. I have no knowledge on that. But with Marcia, no, I mean, not only did she, and without a doubt, save A New Hope, and I would argue, I think she saved Jedi as well. She built the ranch. She built the egg company, which was the predecessor to the ranch. Yes, George was very involved, but she was the one picking the color of the walls. She was the one who found the building. She's the one who worked with the bank to get the loan. Like, she literally helped build the company. And I'm not taking away from anything George did. He did obviously tons, but she was not a witness looking outside through the window. She was inside building it with him, literally building it.
And you have a daughter. How important is it for her to know this story as well?
I think it's very important. I mean, she's too young to get it now, but I hope one day, if my daughter ever watches what I've made, and we did this with our Star Trek show last year with Lucille Ball. And again, I just want to say for the record, like, I'm not running around looking for women that didn't get the attention they deserve. There just are a lot of women who didn't get the attention they deserve. So I'm trying to always shine a light on things that people don't know. It just so happens that with both Star Wars and Star Trek, there is a massively important woman who has like gotten no credit for their actions. So my hope is if my daughter ever watches my work, she will see that I've done that. And that, we've changed Lucille Ball's legacy. Like, and I'm not saying that because of my own opinion. I've heard from the Lucille Ball Museum. I've heard from Lucille Ball fan clubs. I've been interviewed by Lucille Ball fan. Like, I was interviewed by this woman who I would have to guess there's nobody alive who knows more about Lucille Ball than her. She didn't understand how much Lucille contributed to Star Trek. So I do that because it's part of my mission to be a storyteller and find the stories other people may have missed. But yes, I hope my daughter understands that what I tried to do is to hopefully help make her life a little easier.
Well, that's fantastic, man. I'm glad that you're telling stories that people want to hear, and you're not using a giant Harley Quinn sized mallet over somebody's head to tell a story. You're just telling the story.
I hate that.
Yeah. Let's touch upon, a couple of weeks ago, there was a situation with a rather large toy company who's responsible for He-Man and Barbie and Max Steel, Mattel. And there was a bit of a cease and desist order that came when the IP that you have is for the previous rendition of Max Steel from 38 years prior than the one that they procured 21 years ago. How did this come about when Mattel knew that you had already had access to the IP?
So obviously this is a legal matter, and there's a lot of stuff I can't talk about, and I can't talk about anything about the legal matter. Mm-hmm. What I can tell you is, and this is all I can tell you two things. One, we are communicating with Mattel at the moment, and it has been productive. Number two, if the lawyer that sent that letter had sent a letter that was only talking about the copyright, you wouldn't have even known this was going on. It was the fact that they insinuated that I was being underhanded. It's just something about my upbringing. I am not okay with being accused of being underhanded. So whoever wrote that letter, I'm not going to say the lawyer's name, but it was just a dumb letter to send because it accused me of things I didn't do. And again, you can accuse me of a lot of things, but you accuse me of being dishonest, it's not okay. I need to address that. So now the conversation is just about the copyright. And that, like I said, I don't know how it's going to end up, but we are having a productive, drama-free communication at the moment.
And has there been a formal apology for slandering your character? Or libel, since it was in writing?
It's funny you asked that. You know what? That, because it touches on legal issues, I'm going to take the fifth on that.
Okay. So maybe once it's resolved, you can let me know.
Yeah, it's productive. And that's not a word I'm using lightly.
You know, you've done so much with the documentary series, and now you're working with Vice. Vice skews to be a younger demographic. So I understand in the fact that our tail end of Gen X isn't necessarily the audience for this documentary, although you do a lot for us with it. How do you find the balance between the millennials and Gen X and now Gen Z that are coming into the Star Wars fandom?
I think that it's, I mean, dude, it's like everything. Like, you know, you talk to a fan who's 25, they have a very different view of Star Wars. And I think everybody is kind of mixing and matching. So again, I'm 46. A lot of people my age don't like the prequels, but I kept trying and then I got it thanks to the Clone Wars. So I think for a 25-year-old, at some point, maybe when they turn 30 or 32, they give another look to the originals, and then they have the same epiphany I did. Because I didn't like the prequels the first time I saw them. I mean, I always liked Revenge of the Sith, but I have learned to like Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones considerably more because of Clone Wars. But I had to give it a chance. And like the opening couple episodes of Clone Wars are terrible. So, but I didn't give up. And I stuck around long enough that as of today, and for the last 10 years, I mean, Ahsoka Tano is tied with Luke Skywalker for my favorite character. How many 46-year-olds say that? But then I guarantee you there's a 25-year-old out there who loved, like, I'll never forget, I was at a red light and I saw this like 10-year-old girl sitting at a bus stop wearing a Bib Fortuna t-shirt. And I'm like, how does a 10-year-old girl, again, from the world I grew up in, a 10-year-old girl probably wouldn't even wear a Princess Leia or a Han Solo shirt in the 80s. They get, that's for losers. So here I am, you know, a couple of years ago, looking at a 10-year-old girl wearing Bib Fortuna, and it's like, the world has changed.
You know, I remember I was talking to somebody and they're like, oh, when the last Star Wars movie came out, are you excited? I said, no, I had my 3, let the next generation have theirs. Does it ever get to a point that we will accept that these movies aren't made for us anymore and we had our moment in time and that's our version?
I don't think it's, that to me is a very binary statement where it's either X or Y or black or white. I really do think it's a blur where, I mean, I'll give you a great example. I'm always about compare and contrast. My James Bond is Roger Moore and a little bit of Pierce Brosnan. I respect that Sean Connery did a great job. I respect the fact that Sean Connery was a great Bond. But he's not my Bond. I just watched Thunderball recently. It's hard to sit through. And that to me is that's my number one favorite Sean Connery Bonds. So that's what I think it's like for all different age groups. Like you talk to almost anybody a year or two older than me, going back another 25 years. They love Sean Connery. He's their Bond. They think Roger Moore is terrible. They think Pierce Brosnan's even worse. But so it's a lot of it has to do with age. But again, here we are, and I'm sitting here in 2022 watching Thunderball. So I just think it's a blur and people will pick and choose what they like. Another example, I love Solo. I love it. I saw it twice in the theaters. My God, do people hate that movie? So for me, I'm glad they're still making Star Wars. I'll put up with Rise of the, whatever that horrible film was, The Last Jedi. I'm okay putting up with that if it increases the odds of 2 or 3 years later getting Solo, and 2 or 3 years after that getting Rogue One or what. I know I'm out of order, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. You know, Is it interesting when you do a documentary series like this one and then reflect back on the last 9 of the 12 films, you get an appreciation of them, even though you didn't like Last Jedi, even though you didn't like the Rian Johnson one, even though they weren't necessarily your cup of tea or your cup of coffee or whatever expression you want to use in this regard. Is there now more of an appreciation, understanding what was and what led to it?
The 3 episodes 7, 8, and 9?
Yeah, after reviewing 1 through 6 and what was involved in getting there.
I think there was a very strange decision not to let JJ run all 3. I think it was a very strange decision to have a guy spend a year coming up with a plan for 3 movies, and then everything gets thrown. Like, his movie broke $1 billion. Why are you not sticking to the plan? That's what I don't get, if that's answering your question. So I don't get it. To me, they broke every rule in the book. It's like Christopher Nolan did all 3 Batmans. Like, there should be a continuity. Chris Columbus directed the first 2 Harry Potter and was staggeringly involved with the 3rd. Like, why was JJ not only barely involved with The Last Jedi? Why did they throw out his plan? Like, that's what I don't get. I don't know why they did that.
Or to go even further, how come they didn't use Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire saga as the blueprint for 7, 8, and 9?
Well, you hit the nail on the head right there. Like, everyone's like, Marvel. How does Marvel do it? How do they make so many movies with exceptional quality? They look back over 90 years and they pick the shit that worked. And, like, to your point, everybody loved the Timothy Zahn books back then, and even now. The guy gets crazy respect. Like, why wouldn't they do that? Now, they would have to be updated and tweaked and stuff, of course, but I don't know why they didn't do that. And Marvel, and I mean this as a compliment, they take what works and they replicate it.
Well, they did something right with what they've done with the last 20-umpteenth films, so
Yeah.
we'll see what comes next.
I think one of their movies has lost money out of, I think, about 27 or 28 movies. And I don't even know if that movie lost money, A, B, and if it did, listen, it's not a great movie, but it was definitely affected in a bad way by COVID. So I'm talking about Immortals or whatever,
Yeah.
Eternals. But so the reason they have that track record is, I was just interviewing J. Michael Straczynski for something. And it's like, the way Marvel hired him to get Thor to work, I don't know if that is done at Lucasfilm for the episode 7 through 9. Straczynski wrote the most popular Thor comic book series ever, but it was like 30 years ago. So here's Marvel, who can do whatever they want, whenever they want. They get access to everybody and anybody. They're hiring a guy who wrote a comic book 30 years earlier. And, like, I think for Last Jedi, that somebody like that needed to be involved.
Yeah. Brian, I did want to ask you, with Icons Unearthed and having premiered on July 12th at 10 p.m. Eastern, on Vice TV, is this just limited to the 6, or will Icons Unearthed move on to a different franchise season to season?
We have to wait and see how it does. It's gotten off to a good start, so I'm optimistic, but it's all about performance. We got to do good.
With the Max Steel issue that's going on with Mattel, once this all gets resolved, would you be willing to do a documentary about their Max Steel?
No, and I don't mean this to be mean, but I don't know anything about Max Steel. I have no interest in Max Steel. I am in toy groups like you would probably believe. Nobody talks about Max Steel. So I don't know that much about Pokemon, but I know a little bit about it and it's kind of cool. My kids love it. And I know it's massively popular. So I would do a doc about Pokemon. But who would watch a documentary about Max Steel? Like, that's the other problem. Like, it costs a lot of money and time to make these things. Who's my audience?
I never had a Max Steel toy, so I don't know, but just...
Dude, when I got the letter, I had to Google. I didn't know anything. I knew it existed. I'd heard the term, but A, I never even thought about the similarities between the names. It didn't even occur to me. And B, like I said, I had to Google them. I didn't know anything about them.
So then what's the one toy line you feel you haven't touched upon yet that you really want to get your hands into?
Superheroes, particular Batman, Superman, Marvel Legends, all that stuff.
The interesting thing with the Marvel Legends was that Marvel knows how to get you to buy all their toys, where they're like, oh, you want the Thanos toy? Well, you have to buy these 6 to configure them.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm surrounded by characters like that. And I do have to jump. If you have another question, go for it, but I got to jump in a second.
Just the final one. I remember you did buy that G.I. Joe aircraft carrier.
I'm looking at it right now.
Is it still taking up the perimeter of the room?
No, it's taking up the entire center of the room. Yes.
Well, Brian Volk-Weiss, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on everything you do. Unfortunately, I'm not going to see you in San Diego this year.
That stinks.
I know, but you know what? I will be seeing you around, at least here in Southern California.
Awesome, man. I look forward to it. Thanks for your support, as always.
Thanks, man. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.